Welcome, everybody, to a Delco Nerd Network Hot Take. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen a hot take before, well, it's where a few friends get in a basement. We give our thoughts, we give our opinions on a TV show, a movie, or a game. Today, it's going to be another game, and that game is Senua Saga Hellblade 2. Here to discuss, as always, the triple threat, Chris Trio.
Gooch, I'm so happy to be here, and I'm also happy you didn't mess up the name because
yes, I was.
These are such the naming convention for this game.
We went from
Hellblade 1,
Hellblade, Senua's
right,
Sacrifice,
to
Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2.
I don't care who it is, whoever is in charge of marketing on that decision point. Get them out. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. That's a nitpick, though. Gooch, how are you? We just got off another great podcast.
Yeah.
Dragon's Dogma 2, which you can either check out if it's not out already.
Yeah. I'm gonna do in the order Dragon's Dogma 2, Hellblade.
Awesome.
We're gonna do Stellar Blade after this one, but I think I'm gonna put Final Fantasy Rebirth in front because it came out before. But I want to do that last.
I see.
Anyway, a lot of games. We've had a lot of games cooking, but this one has only been out for a little short week, and it is a shorter game. So here we are shortly after to talk about this short game. Oh boy. A launch title, or remember when we saw the Xbox Series X, we saw this game. This was our first Series X game, and I feel the wait was not worth it.
So here,
or I should say, this game should have came out at launch. And I feel maybe if it was like $30 or like packaged with the Series X, I think a lot of people would have taken a fancy to this game. But I feel like the expectations from the first one kind of being a sort of a backdoor success, kind of like took off after it came out.
Absolutely.
People really liked what it was doing. And they did the same thing again. But I feel like the expectations that people had were not matching what the game actually was, and I think that's why people didn't like it.
Right.
And why I didn't vibe. You know what? No. I didn't vibe with it because I didn't really like what this game was doing.
Right. And I think the expectations part, would you think it's fair to say that that's on the fault of the marketing team?
No.
Because I think it is.
I would say the opposite. They didn't market this game at all.
But they did but that's the
they did at
every single showcase events. We got more,
right?
But
once we got into the last few weeks, it's not like Hellblade.
Right.
Like,
my problem with the expectations is I think that's on the part of the marketing team because those glimpses we were given, I think, gave us the impression that this was going to be a much larger in scope game. A much larger in scope game than the first one. And I feel like,
sure.
And I think
I really thought that's what it was going to be. Clearly, it was not.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. I think that's a failure. Whether it's on Ninja Theory, which I don't think it is. I think it's maybe more on Xbox. It's a failure of them for setting that expectation and for projecting that type of game.
Because Hellblade 2 is a great little tech demo. I think it's graphically incredible. The motion capture performances
looks fantastic.
Iceland, it looks great in this because that's where the game takes place, and I've been there, and it looks like that. So I was kind of vibing with that. The game looks beautiful, but my hand hurt from playing the game forward and sprint
the whole time,
and it like. Every session, my hand hurt, and I was like, "What is going on? Am I getting old?
Yeah, right.
What's happening?" And then Penza was saying, friend of the show, we were talking in Discord. He's like, "You can change in accessibility," and I changed it so I didn't have to hold sprint. My hand literally hurt playing this game because you're just constantly holding the two because you're constantly moving and going forward. You're never stopping. Yeah, I mean, the game and the puzzles are simple. The combat's simple. The gameplay
the same exact thing as the first one.
Is non-existent.
That's what I guess. Yeah. I played Senua's Sacrifice for 3 hours the other night, and I was like, man, this is boring. I'm just running around. The combat's very base, and I'm solving these visual puzzles, and I'm just running around the map. I don't like this. I'm gonna just go right into 2. Little did I know, Hellblade 2 is mechanically almost at least from the 2.5 hours I played, mechanically almost the exact same game. Mm-hmm. Right? Would you say that's fair to say?
Yeah,
it's like between
it's been
fighting
a few
and
years.
just running.
It's been a few years since I played Sacrifice.
Right.
I played it actually the week COVID started,
right,
or like the weekend before.
So I think that in another universe where expectations are probably managed for this by Microsoft, because I don't think people were wrong to have the impression that this was going to be a bigger game until they came out and were like, no, this is a 5-hour experience and it's a $50 game, which I still think $50 is too much for this. Sorry, one second. Really parched today, huge. I think if those expectations were managed, we'd be having a bit different of a conversation here, but it's an incredibly good-looking game. And I think calling it a game is almost a bit of a stretch, even to a degree. It's an interactive experience almost.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
I wrote something in our achievements and trophy corner as like a sort of a sum up, and I really liked it, so I sort of want to read it verbatim. It's not about the achievements and trophies. It's about the game. Hellblade 2 is a short film game. It's artsy. Right. It's beautiful to oogle. It's Unreal Engine renditions of ancient Iceland and its motion captured performance and characters. But it's so artsy, it forgets to be a game for the entire 7 hours I played. Senua's Sacrifice novelty wore out, and none of us knew it until playing the sequel, which largely does the same as the first. Moving forward and sprinting is the majority of the gameplay, to a point it hurts your hand, and having to change some accessibility settings to get around that. The combat is simply cinematic, but it's not very fun mechanically. Once you're in the last 2 chapters, it feels stale and like you've already seen this. Walking within the first 2 hours becomes boring. Most of the game, I was hoping it would be over soon, or I would get to the next impressive narrative bit, so I would quickly become engaged again. I don't want this game to be longer. The end is interesting and good. I feel the storytelling between how Senua's mental illness is perceived by people she allies herself with, and how she can use this following to gain power and become powerful is a compelling one. It's not worth the price tag, but it's worth a weekend Game Pass excursion. Coming off Dragon's Dogma 2, Banishers, Stellar Blade, and FF7 Rebirth, it was refreshing to be fully done a game within days and hours from start to finish. I don't think Ninja Theory failed. I just think they need a new idea on their next go.
Well, I don't think they failed at what they were trying to do. They obviously executed what they were trying to do. But
right, I just think again the novelty.
This would have been better served as a show.
Yeah,
like as just a film that I watched as an animated film.
This is so artsy, it just like forgot what it was.
And like, don't get me wrong, like this looks fantastic, but like it's not. And I hate to bring up like the Sony example, but like it's not blowing me away 20 times more than like a Horizon. Like when I see a screenshot of that, and there's so much more going on in that game.
It's much prettier because of the color.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and even the colors punched up in this, and like it looks really real. But like it just it takes a lot. I feel like to blow people away with graphics these days. Like really blow them away. We've plateaued there to a degree heavily. But I said this in Discord. But the more I played this game, the more it reminded me of Scorn from last year.
It's so funny because I had such a good time with Scorn.
That's the funny thing.
Even though
I felt
gameplay
like Scorn
was like non-existent.
It was non-existent, but the puzzles I felt
with your little mouth
your
gun
weird
thing.
mouth gun. You did get like a pistol and a shotgun at a point, but the combat wasn't the main idea of that. You were really getting a lot of the story through the environment, and these puzzles were different and interesting enough to keep you going. And that was only $40. It was $40, right?
I don't remember.
I think it was $40, which I remember us being like, this should be probably 20 or 30. But it reminded me of that in the way of how they want to present this. It's a very artistically driven game, and you're not necessarily there as heavily for the gameplay. And I think, again, you can make that work, and I think that can be an interesting idea, but it didn't.
I mean,
for
you
me.
didn't even finish it, and it's like again, it took me 7 hours to finish it. I don't really know how people were finishing in 5 unless you were like really fucking blitzing through it. But yeah, you didn't finish it, and I even said I have to admit, I was kind of checking myself when we were getting this game because I was like, Trio has to finish it. I'm like, he's probably not going to finish it. And I was like, does he really have to finish games for necessarily all the time, like to talk about games? And I was like, maybe I should like check my own opinion on that one, but. And I was just like, yeah, he doesn't need to finish this. Like, there's no idea that like he needs to see it through to the end.
Because I felt like after 2.5 hours, I was just doing like you said the same thing.
You saw the game.
Yeah, I was like, this is okay. We're not evolving beyond this. And again, playing 3 hours of Senua's Sacrifice, it's the same thing. It just looks better. And for this to take how many years?
Yeah,
what are we doing?
I don't think Melina Juergens' performance is anything either to scoff at.
I think she's fine. I think she's great, but like, yeah.
Right. It's just like, I just feel like I'm like, we can't double down on Senua again to like do another game. Like, I really don't think it's going to work.
Well, I think you have to just evolve
because it didn't work the second time. It worked the first time because there were like no expectations. It was really different. It dealt with mental illness. It was an interesting perspective. I actually wanted to watch the featurette they have in the credits, and they had something about it on Iceland, so I'll have to watch it later to just get some of that background. But yeah, I just don't know how they can like put out a third game and expect it to be like received well at all.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people wanted to like Hellblade 2, and I think the people who like it for what it is, but maybe were in that bag at the time. And the reason Hellblade was kind of, like I said in my little blurb, was cool for me is because I was done it in a few days, man. I've been playing like 80+ hour games recently, and I'm really sick of like big open world games. And I think I'm like actually like there's no new games out right now. I'm thinking of playing like Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Right.
I'm like, that's a fucking, like, I looked at like the time to platinum on PSN profiles. 100 hours.
I was gonna say that's an easy
But I still might do it.
Right.
But at least I'm not playing like 6 at the same time. It was
that's when it
and
becomes
it's
the
first
issue
person.
for me.
It's a bit different. I've been playing tons of third person action games, and they just get really trivial.
Yeah.
For me, like especially since like a lot of games are those, and this is a third person action game too.
Right.
But it's more about like it's less about. It's more about like I don't even know what Hellblade's about. It's artistic value more than it is about its
and I guess
gaminess.
Oh no, for sure. The narrative is king here. I think the gameplay is just left to the backseat.
I don't even think the narrative is king because I don't think the narrative is that good.
I guess it's taking priority for sure. Is what I mean.
It's interesting to see Senua interact with different characters. Unlike the first game, and like that one character she fights in the beginning sort of like becomes like an ally. And, you're seeing what's kind of going on between these Icelandic tribes, and they're sacrificing people to essentially like stave off the giants. Like that's essentially what's going on. That's why the slaves are being brought in, because they're using them as sacrifices. And then you get to the end, and Senua is in this position where she, spoilers, she like kills the king, usurps him, that dude's dad.
Yeah.
And she's in a position where she could become him essentially, and it's kind of like her, in her mind, kind of like, do I seize this power, or do like my father too? Because her father was also like that, a shitty guy with power, and she could essentially become that. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting, but how we got here, like, I don't know. I think I would have liked to see more of a game than
just this
little
walking movie almost.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't even want to call it a walking simulator. You cannot compare this game to Death Stranding in the slightest.
Oh, well,
there are
for sure.
so many gameplay mechanics to Death Stranding that's going out of style. Like especially
that's a delivery simulator, not a walking
simulator. But people would call Death Stranding a walking simulator. But even games like Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures anthologies, they're much more interactive and games than they are narrative or like horror experiences.
It feels at least equal compared to this. This feels like it's like the afterthought.
Yeah, like what did we play this year?
The
Devil in Me.
Yeah, I think so. No,
Devil Inside. Devil in Me. Devil in Me.
Is that what it was? It was. I know
there's a game called like Little Devil Inside that's coming out.
Interesting.
I've known about that game forever. Actually, Brad Ellis from Last Stand was talking about it. I'm like, God, that game still doesn't come out. Anyway, but when we were playing that game, I never was like, wow, this game is very not gamey. No, it feels like a game for sure. Mm-hmm. Like, is it a different kind of game?
Right.
Yeah, but like it never stops being a game to me, even though you're not doing a whole ton of button inputs,
right. Yeah, it's just,
I could see this game getting nominated for like best art direction, and that's it. Not performance.
If Scorn or Atomic Heart doesn't get that nomination, this doesn't. No,
Scorn did. Atomic Heart.
Oh,
did.
That's right. Scorn did get.
And it's funny as I've been playing Atomic Heart recently again.
How's that going?
It's good.
Yeah,
but we'll save it. For the monthly.
We'll get to that. Yeah. Yeah, man. I don't want to beat down on them, and
it's hard not to.
It's just hard not to. With how long this has been in development, with, again, fairly or unfairly, the expectations that were set by those reveals that was set by those trailers and stuff like that.
They were just hyping it up to be a big deal, and I think it was. If it would have came out at launch.
Right. But I think those trailers very much gave us the impression that this was going to be larger and more in depth.
Bigger scope.
Bigger scope.
Like you said.
And I appreciated them at least coming out and being like, at some point, and they were like, oh no, this is a small, like, $50 experience. Fine, I appreciate you coming out and saying that. But I feel like the damage was done at that point already. And then you kind of start thinking.
When do you think the damage was dealt?
What do you say?
When do you think people started to turn on this?
I think when we saw it at the Xbox Showcase for the 4th time or whatever it was. Like, I feel like how many times it was there like almost every year for the past
it was like the Game Awards like 2 years, and then they showed it off like 2 more times.
I think people were just like,
when are we getting this?
Like, what's going on?
Right.
You know,
especially
it wasn't
for how short it is.
And that's the other thing. I feel like you were kind of like for 5 years, like, what's going on? Okay, you know, it's a larger experience. It's more in depth. They're doing more with this, so I guess that makes sense that they're taking this long. But then they come out and say, wait, that's a 5-hour experience. That's pretty comparable. Or I'm sorry, an 8-hour experience, whatever. 5 to 7 hour experience. That's very comparable.
5 to 10 hours.
Yeah, that's comparable to the first one. And everyone's like, oh, well, okay. What is taking so long then? And they're like, well, it's going to look really good. And it's like, that's cool. A lot of games look really good these days. What else do you have? You know what I mean? Not all of them, of course, but I think, you know, a lot of your major AAA, like, is it on that level of detail to like where you can see the iris clear through? Probably not. But like that is negligible to, I think, a normal person playing a game. And I think the people who are playing games want more gameplay usually. You know what I mean? That's what they're there for. Not that there isn't a place for these games to exist. But yeah, I just think this was unfortunately a miss, sadly. And that sucks. It's not on one game to like help the Xbox brand or like save it, if you will, or whatever. Not that it needs saving necessarily at this point. I think it will always be around to a degree, especially as a publisher at the very least. But again, just another like, guys, what's the management process looking like over here? Like, what is going on behind the scenes? Like, I guess like if this was always the plan, okay, why didn't you kind of like project that better to, you know, us purchasers and things like that? It just felt like there was a lot of mismanagement in the expectation department, at least.
Gene Park of the Washington Post was talking about this, and I don't know if it was on a Last Stand content. I don't know if it was on. I think it was on Defining Duke. He was on Defining Duke for their review for that week, and he was talking about how he was looking at coverage that people were doing for the game, and Ninja Theory never talks about gameplay. They never refer to anything in the game as gameplay. And I'm like, that's interesting. That is weird. I'm trying to think, what game came out recently that we were talking about the way devs were talking about it and how we as the players sort of misconstrued what the game was? I'm trying to think. And it was in terms of like, you know what I'm talking about?
I don't. I'm trying to remember. It wasn't like Elden Ring with no,
it wasn't.
Was it a game we recently reviewed?
I think so. Because it was like the way we basically, like, when we were talking about whatever game this was, we were talking about how the devs were talking about it, and they were talking about it one way, and we were taking it as another. What?
It's not ringing any bells recently. For some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm trying to remember. Anyway. But again, listening to what the devs are saying is kind of important in that regard.
Right, and that's why I think almost this isn't necessarily, I think this is more on the Xbox side of things of, like, the marketing and setting expectations correctly for your, your customers. So I think in a different world, yeah, this gets and you know it's getting great. It's got like an 80 or something.
Yeah, I mean it's not
for what it is. It's what it is.
It's not bad for what it is. Like I said, like I enjoyed my time even though I was like bored a lot. Like I think it was like kind of just cool to go through. Again, like different from what I've been playing, so it was kind of a nice palate cleanser in that way. But And I liked Senua's Sacrifice, but you know I went into that a few years later, and again, for this as well, have to play with headphones. That's definitely the way to play.
Which is, by the way,
I put it on speakers, and it is a vastly different experience.
I think that's a stupid idea. You want to hear why?
Sure.
Because this seems like something made to almost be like I could play this / watch this with someone, like when I'm and it's like if we all need headphones to really experience it.
That's a good point.
I don't think that works.
It's funny because I feel like this.
But I think you're right.
This game being about people with, you know, I mean, Senua is literally psychotic.
Yeah.
that's kind of like the point. She's
she's like schizophrenic, right? Yeah. Hears voices, sees things,
right. And
they think it's a curse, right? That's the idea of like.
Well, she thinks she's. At first they think like her father thinks it's a curse,
right.
and that's why she's exiled. But like now they're like kind of seeing it as like some sort of like oracle. Like she's an oracle.
I see. She has.
Did you defeat any of the giants?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so like she uses her like. I fret to even call them abilities. I don't think that's like.
Or like slow time ability or whatever.
No, she uses like her like. Psychosis to like defeat them.
Interesting.
Like she like figures out like I guess she kind of like
she calls them really mean names.
No, she like she like kind of like gets in their heads, but I'm kind of like what's magic and what's like happening in her head,
because it feels like the first one squarely she's just she has a mental issue of some kind, but they don't understand it because it's back in this ancient time. So they see it as a curse and banish her.
I'm like, I'm not exactly sure what's real and what's magic.
Right.
How like she's finding out like basically to defeat the giants, she has to figure out their names, like their real names,
like a demon.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so like figuring out the name sort of excises it. And that's what she does, but
like
she's
Pazuzu, right?
Yeah, so she's doing it like in her own head, but
what? Yeah,
right. It's hard to tell like what's real and what's in her head, which is interesting, and I think that's probably the point,
right?
She's like, like there's a few parts that are just kind of interesting.
Like, is she even really seeing a giant or something? Right? Like, even
it's definitely there,
right? Okay,
because other people are seeing them. Yeah, so like again, like this world is real, but it's also magical. Like it's using these, those.
See, that's interesting because like
the mythological creatures and characters. But I think that's like an interesting component of the game. It's making you think a little bit. It's real, but it's magic. It's.
But I think that can also get a bit muddy because the first one feels like, to me at least, from what I played, like the 3 hours I played, she's exiled to this place. And she's literally fighting her inner demons, but that's projected outwards in what she's seeing. Like you're fighting Bao Raven or whatever, like all these different gods. But that's more like you're physically doing it, but that's really kind of like she's having a mind fight, for lack of a better term, right? Like you're not supposed to believe that these are necessarily really happening before her. This is just kind of like her mental internal journey that you are experiencing, and she's interpreting through. This boss battle.
So in 2, it seems like her journey becomes a bit more external than internal. It's
interesting.
More both. But again, it's interesting, how quick I was in and out. If I was in this game for like 20 hours, I think I would have a much more negative opinion. But I think I sat down for maybe like 4 or 5 sessions and I was done with it. And then I went back to do my collectible cleanup and I have the 100 gamer score or 1,000 gamer score and I'm done. And that's all it is. And I'm never going to play it again. There's no reason. There's no replay value in this game.
But also, like, it doesn't feel like we watch movies again, Right. But, like, there's no value. You don't feel.
But here's the thing. Yeah. So they do add, if you get all the collectibles, and when you beat the game, you can change the voices in her head to be her companions. So you're hearing more about, like, what they're thinking. I'm like, that's cool, but, like, I don't know if I play the whole game again to get that.
It's like, that sounds interesting, but not enough to get me back.
You can get it to be like different characters or even just the narrator. And I'm like, that's cool. But again, unless you're playing it like 7 years later, maybe that would be valuable. I don't know why you would like finish the game again and be like, oh, I'm going to play Hellblade 2 again.
Right.
Like I just went into chapter select, listened to a podcast and was just kind of going back for the collectibles.
Sure. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
I wouldn't recommend it.
I wouldn't either. I would have to buy it for sure.
I would really have to know a specific person who really would like this kind of thing. Like, I don't think my girlfriend would be into this at all.
Would you say even as like a Game Pass, just download?
It's sure. Like I said, a weekend Game Pass excursion. You're looking for something to play and literally finish it in a few sittings in a weekend.
How much do you think this is selling? Like, who's purchased? Like, because you did purchase this, right?
I did buy it.
I'm curious how much this is.
How much it sold?
Yeah, and what
I would say probably 500,000 to 1 million
copies. Yeah, maybe.
And that's a pretty wide spectrum.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah. It's just.
But I would also question, what did the first one make?
No, right.
In its first few months.
This isn't necessarily going to be your Game Pass subscriber incentive, but like, I don't know, man. I really am interested to see what Call of Duty does for the Game Pass numbers and things like that, and what it will do.
Call of Duty looks kind of interesting.
It does. And
listen, I'm one thing I've been saying for a while. It's real off topic. Is getting into the conflicts that we grew up during, like the Iraq War, the War on Terror.
20 years old now. It is wild.
Seeing like Bill Clinton, Saddam Hussein, W. Bush in there. Senior.
HW.
Yeah, HW Bush Senior in there. I was like, we were alive during some of this.
No, it's true.
So it's stuff we lived through. So it's kind of interesting.
No, definitely. But yeah, man, I don't know what do you think Ninja Theory does next? I mean, I felt
they have 2 projects in the can.
Xbox
or not in the can.
And listen, they're between a rock and a hard space with this. I don't know what you do, but they're like they're moving on, they're staying around. Listen, they're moving on to their next game.
Project
They're
Mara?
pitching, yeah, something like that. They felt like they really
And they have
were
another
coming
thing
out to say
in development.
Right.
Yeah.
It felt like
So
they
have
were a
2
little bit on the
projects.
back foot there.
But again,
like, hey,
whatever it is, I don't want it to be Senua.
well, but I don't even think that's necessarily the problem. I don't think I
Hellblade.
want it to be this type of like
Sure. That
style
too.
again, you know?
Yeah.
I think they explored it really well with the first one, and they just overstayed their welcome with the second one, and they were banking too heavily on visuals. And again, I think we're kind of at, like we said, at that plateau. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
And, when we were talking about, like, showing stuff in trailers, like, there's only so much you can show.
That's what I was saying. If you only have Maddie was talking about that.
You didn't even get into the action set piece that was in one of those main trailers.
I remember,
like,
yeah.
But the first trailer is not in the game at all.
Yeah,
Like, she has that face paint on at the end of the game, but, like, you don't see, like, that chanting that she does in, like, that first trailer. Like, that's
that
not
first
in the game
trailer
at all.
was so fucking cool, man.
Right. It was like, what? Yeah.
I'm like,
But,
what's going on?
That was such a proof of concept kind of trailer. I don't know if that was in Unreal Engine.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
I have to look it up.
Because that was like, they must have just been starting working on it. Anyway, I think that does it for us, Trio. You can play us out.
All right, I will play us out. Gooch, this has been a lot of fun, actually. I'm glad we got to talk about it. But thank you all so much for watching with us. If you've been with us live on twitch.tv/Delco Nerd Network, you can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are found. Just search Delco Nerd Network on your favorite app of choice. We are on all the social medias as well, at Delco Nerds on basically everything with an @sign. Got a Discord channel, a Facebook page. All that information can be found on our website, DelcoNerdNetwork.com. And you can email us your comments, questions, or concerns to delconerds@gmail.com. We're happy to get back to you. But for Gooch, I've been Trio. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay nerdy. We'll see you next time.
What?